recording. All right, so that's a close tab. This is a Aerospike and over 4 million transactions per second. So we're going to look at setting up a Linux machine on DigitalOcean, and the instructions for that are right here at that GitHub repo. The README goes to 11 Golang training, and it's weird, tree master 67. It's just Golang training, and then right here 67. So that's it. And then I'll bring you to the README. We create a SSH key, step one. You guys just saw this. I forgot to start the video, so I'll just show it again. To create a SSH key, you first check to see if that SSH key exists. If you have one, you do that like this. And once you've done that, if you don't have one, you can do SSH keygen and just ask you where to save it. And it'll suggest for you that you save it in that location with that name. You can then go here and you can put your SSH key in. Always lets you connect to GitHub without entering your password. Right? And you could test it by putting this in. So now we're going to create a server on DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is where you could, host what are they? How do you describe it? Droplets. I just want to see your home page. This is all you're showing me. I don't want to see all that. How do I get to their home page? DigitalOcean. There we go. So, right, you could create simple cloud hosting built for developers. So you log in, and then you create a droplet, and then it asks you for what kind of a machine do you want to create. And the machine you want to create is, if you're using Aerospike, Aerospike only works on 64-bit processors, and it works better with more RAM. So there's specifications on Aerospike. You could take a look at that. So Aerospike is that high availability, high performance, NoSQL database. And if you're doing this on Windows, by the way, let me just show that resource. If you're doing this on Windows, you go to my resources, which I've closed already, and that is here. Let me get that for you. Courses, go, materials, resources. So inside these presentations, there's a presentation for doing SSH on Windows, which is right here, PuTTY in Windows. So you got the instructions, you see how to do it in Windows, and now we're going to create a droplet. So let's create a droplet. I'm just going to go with, 4 gigs, 6 cents an hour, which would be crazy, and go with 8 gigs. We're not doing anything high performance. And this will normally be your domain name. That's the suggested naming, but we could just do FCC class example. And then down here, I choose the data center, which will be closest to my clients. We'll do San Francisco, or where my customers will be. We'll do San Francisco so we have a fast connection as we're SSHing into it. We could choose different flavors. The documentation is all through 14.4. Something kind of changed between 14.4 and 15, and I'm not quite sure what that was. Daniel, the teaching assistant at my class out at Fresno State, said, no, you should use this. So here's the newer version. That's what the instructions are all for, seeing how to do it the new way. And then private networking, I'm, again, not totally sure what that does. Adds droplet to droplet networking within the same region. So if I have a bunch of machines connected to each other and, different servers and a database server, that allows the connections between them easily. And then IPv6 allows, the new Internet Protocol v6 if you want to start using that. So already, this is where I'd enter my SSH key. And so I would just come here and I'd get my entire key, which would be all this, right? And I got that by running that cat command after it's created. And I'd paste it in here and provide some comment, and then just add SSH key. It's already in use, so it won't allow me to add it, right? So I'm just going to choose that one, and then I create. So it's creating my droplet. So I just created a Linux Ubuntu box. But this Linux Ubuntu box is pretty much stripped clean. It's got nothing on it in terms of software. It's got Ubuntu and then the ability to SSH into it. So we're going to configure and set up Linux, and then we'll put Go onto it. And then we'll test a hello world. We'll do that all within an hour. Does that sound good? You guys still interested? Okay, I bored you a little bit by going over the basic stuff twice. So there, it's all set up. Here's my IP address. I'm going to have to come back and use that. Let's just look at what our next step is in the instructions. So it tells you here, create the host name. DigitalOcean recommends your URL. Use -digit for multiple servers. Right? So if I had multiple servers, I was creating multiple machines, I do that. Make sure to set the server to Ubuntu. 32-bit is recommended unless you have more than 4 gigabytes of RAM. Except for if you use Aerospike, which requires 64-bit for both main database and API. I don't know if 32-bit's recommended. I'd go 64-bit no matter what. Make sure you turn on private networking so you can connect your database without using up bandwidth. Make sure you have put in an SSH key to avoid unsecure password logins. You'll need your IP address, so we already saw that. And once your server's created, you'll see the IP address and copy it somewhere. Connect to a server, so that was this right here, right? That's my IP address now. In this previous example, I got that one. That's just an example. So now we're going to connect to our server's root account, and we're going to use SSH on Unix machines. And so we're going to do this command right here, and we're going to connect as root. So I'm going to do SSH root at, no, that's not what I want. Control C. Okay, SSH root at, and let me go get my IP address. The authenticity of host can't be established. RSA key fingerprint is something. Are you sure you want to continue connecting? Yes. Warning, permanently added to the list of known hosts. Welcome to Ubuntu 15.10. I don't quite understand that, right? Because it's like, it's just giving me some warnings. Authenticity of the host can't be established. RSA key fingerprint is, right? Are you sure you want to continue connecting? Yes. So maybe, it's warning me I might be connecting to something I didn't know I was connecting to. And add it to the list of known hosts. I guess known hosts are people that I connect with. Anyhow, I'm connected. Some sort of a warning. And now I'm looking at that computer. So I'm there at that computer. I could see like, hey, is there anything there? Nothing there. Right? ls, nothing. ls-la. There's a little bit. So there's a bash history, a bash RC, cache profile, SSH. So if I go and I look into that SSH, and ls-la, right? Authorized keys. So probably in that authorized keys, I don't know, what would I see in that? I don't know if I'm going to show people anything that they can't see. Is that the same key I sent over? It starts with a bunch of A's and ends with 32162. So let's look at my key. Where did I put that? I could launch a new terminal and then just do cat. And the cat command is cat user SSH ID. So ID underscore RSA dot pub. So a bunch of A's and then 32162. Bunch of A's, 32162. So that's kind of cool. And the way I got that was in DigitalOcean. I just dropped it in when I was setting it up, right? Follow? Cool. Too slow for you guys? It's good. You like a little bit of the explanation? And kind of seen the walkthrough. All right, so we've connected. And make sure you have set up SSH keys with your computer, which we did above. After running SSH root at IP address command, your terminal is now on the server, right? And so root at td trial something tilde pound. I don't know what that does. Doesn't quite look like a terminal command. So create, oh, I see what it is. It's just sort of showing here, right? Mine is now root at FCC class example. Before I had TD trial, and then we were up here, right? So that's what that's showing right there. That's what it looks like. That's a little confusing. I'm going to take that note out for people. They might be like, how do I enter that command? There it is. All right, cool. So now we want to create a user with sudo access. So this is like a security thing. Instead of giving everybody root access, we're going to sort of protect the access to our machine. And right now we're logged into the server with full admin access. It's better to create a user with more limited access. So we're going to do add user. And we're connected to the machine. We're going to do add user. And username is Todd. And so adding user Todd, adding new group Todd, adding new user Todd with group Todd, creating home directory home Todd, copying files from, etc. Scale. Enter new Unix password, 123, 123. And changing the user information for Todd, enter the new value and press enter for the default. So I don't need any of that stuff in there. Is this information correct? When you see a capital letter at the terminal, that means that's the default. So I can just hit enter. And that accepted yes. And so now I've got root at FCC, and I also have a new user. So I created a new user here. And I'm going to just move this over so we can see these side by side. There we go. Creates a folder with username. The user has access to that folder. Make sure you put in a good password. You can leave the other settings blank. Just keep pressing enter. Give the user sudo access. So now I need to give the user sudo access of gpassword -a and Todd sudo. Adding user Todd to group sudo, right? And add an SSH key to access the new user account. So flip your access to the new user. So switch user, Todd. So now I went from root at FCC to Todd at FCC. And I need to move to the home directory, so I'm going to hit CD, and I went to my home directory, and create a folder and restrict access to only yourself. So I'm going to do make dir.ssh. And now if I look at this, right, I'm just playing with those different commands. So if I look at this, I have that SSH folder. And then here are Unix permissions, okay? And so this is the user. This is the group. And then the user, so there are permissions for the user. Here are permissions for the group. So permissions for the user, permissions for the group. That's read, write, execute, read, write, execute. And this is everybody else. People who aren't a user, who aren't in the group, have read and execute. And so I could change those permissions. So read, write, execute. And the way you change those permissions is right here. So change mod 700 SSH. Who knows what that means? Carson?
I don't know.
I need my .ssh. So these user change modifications, right? Change, modify, change modification. Yeah, I guess modification permissions, right? chmod. And why the 700?
I don't know.
Okay, so read, write, execute. Read is the number 4. They just arbitrarily assign these numbers to them. Write is the number 2. And execute's the number 1. If you want to give somebody just execute permission, you say 1. If you want to give somebody execute and write, you say you give them permission 3. If you want to give them read and execute, what number do you give them? Read and execute, what number do you give them? Read is 4, write is 2, execute's 1. So if you want read and execute, that's going to be 5. It's going to be 4 plus 1 is 5. Right? So read is 4, write is 2, execute's 1. That's kind of cool. So since we're saying 7 right here, we're saying that anybody with the username Todd, read, write, execute. And then anybody in group Todd, that one right there, nothing. And anybody who is neither Todd nor group Todd, they also get nothing. So this is the permissions for Todd, permissions for group, permission for everyone else. This is for permissions for Todd, permissions for group, permissions for everyone else is right there. So we just put in 4, 2, 1, some combination all added up. sets the permissions for Todd, for the group, right, and for everyone else. And so when I enter this, and if I do that same command, you can now see that Todd has read, write, execute. 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7. The group has 0, didn't get any. And then everyone else also got 0. So that's kind of cool, right? That's how you change mod. I'm just curious what chmod wiki, what that means. Command line system call, which may change the access permissions of the file system objects. Why mod? Why do they call it mod? Modify permissions, I guess. The name is an abbreviation of change mode. So mode, read, write, execute, I guess. Anyhow, so we changed the permissions. So Todd has access to SSH, but nobody else. And now we're going to create a file and add the SSH key to it. So we're putting the SSH key. So when I connect as Todd, not as, what was the other one? Not as root, right? When I connect as Todd, I'll be able to log in with my SSH key. So I'm going to do nano. And nano is a text editor that's available at the command line. So I'm doing nano.ssh. So in the SSH folder, I'm creating a file, authorized keys. And you saw earlier we had this file. I guess I got rid of it, right? But in the root, we saw that root had authorized keys. Remember that? Yeah? No? You want to see it? Yeah? You want to see it? So let's go look at root. So how do I switch user to root? SU, and what I put in? Username. So let's try that. SU.
You can do just SU.
And I don't think there's a password. What was the password?
Type sudo SU.
I don't know if I had a password at root.
Type sudo SU.
Let's disconnect.
I know how to fix it. I've done this before.
Sudo SU root.
No, don't put root. Password for your account, Todd.
Ah, sweet. So now I'm at root. So could I go to root's thing, and then I could do an LSLA, and there's the SSH, so I could change in .ssh, and then I could do an ls-la, and there's authorized keys. And when we looked at authorized keys, there was the key, right? So now as I change user to Todd, and then go to my root, and then list what's there, and then change into SSH, right? And there's no file yet authorized keys like another one. So we're going to put that same key into this file. So to do that, we are going to do nano.ssh authorized keys.
Nano is a text editor.
And you're going to see that here in a second. So I'm saying in the folder SSH, I'm going to create the file authorized keys. Okay? So it brought up a text editor. And now in this text editor, crap, I need my cat, what is it? ID RSA pub. So there we go. So I just paste that in, and that's all on one line. Right? So there's the end of the line, there's the front. Has all the A's at the beginning. 32162 at the end. Okay? So I exit and save it. And write to .ssh authorized keys. Yep, that's where I want it. Make sure I've spelled it all right. And now if I do an LSLA, and I'm in my got my authorized key file in there, and if I look at that, there's the key. Cool. So we've added the key there, so we can now log in as Todd. And what step are we on? Added user, added the user gave the user sudo access, changed the modifications on the SSH folder, and then put the cat in there, and then we should be able to cat for this user the same command, and no such file or directory. What am I doing wrong? ls ls-la, we got SSH. So cat goes from I'm logged in as Todd, and auth ID RSA pub. I think here I need authorized key. So that's is it key or keys? Keys. There it is. So I just need to change that. Dun, dun. Right here. All right, so now restrict the permission of the file. So we'll just lock that down. What's this going to do? Change mod, change mode. 600 is what? 4 and 2. And 4 and 2 were what?
Read and write.
Read and write. Right? So we're giving who read and write permission? Who are we giving it to? Oops. Who are we giving read-write permission to? Here, let me help.
Todd user?
Yeah, just to Todd. So Todd will get, for this folder, Todd will get read-write, but not execute. And everybody else will have nothing. So this first part's for the user, and this is the user. Second part is for the group, and this is the group. And then the third part is for everyone else. So first part is for the user, second part is for the group, third part's for everyone else. So let's do change mod 600 .ssh authorized keys. And now if we list that all again, you can see the SSH authorized keys. Sorry, we should have been looking at authorized keys. Well, that's for the folder, right? But if we go in and look at, it'll just be read-write for authorized keys, RW. So we're going to return to root, so we're going to exit. That's all we need to type, actually, to get out of Todd, because we were in root and then we went into Todd. And let's go back to root's home directory. And connect to your new account, either PuTTY or SSH. So we want to connect to the new account. And I think I'm going to do that from a new tab. So right here, Command K, this tab's not connected. This tab is my local computer. Right? That's all the stuff I have on my local computer. I'm not sure what Palade and Temp is now that I'm looking at that, but I know WebStorm projects and documents and screenshot.
Like Paladin.
Not sure what that is.
What a type of tank. Isn't that a type of tank? Paladin.
I thought it was something from the
That
Middle
word
Ages
probably
or
came from
Renaissance or something.
So now we're going to test, and we could do SSH Todd at, and my IP address is, got like way too many tabs open. Don't need that.
Oh, it's a 9.
There's my IP address. And so I connected. So it worked. Pretty cool. Terminate. So now I'm going to restrict SSH access to root and password connections because I only want to connect with Todd. I don't want root, which has access to the whole machine, to be accessible. So restrict SSH access to root and password connections. At root, edit the settings in the SSH config file. So I'm in root, and nano, etc. And we could just see what's in there. ls-la. And I don't have anything in there, etc. But change to root and then ls-la. So here's everything at the root of the computer. There's a folder there, etc. If I change into etc., I could see what's in there. It has all this stuff in here. So it's just like a lot of computer stuff, Linux stuff. And so inside etc., there's SSH right there. So I could change into SSH and see what's in that. And that's what's in SSH. And now I'm going to edit SSH config. And so I'm going to do nano sshd config. What's the difference between SSH config and sshd config? Anybody? Carson, you don't know this?
Okay, SSHD is the daemon, and that's basically like a server end. So like the SSH config is your client-side configuration, and the
not daemon.
daemon. The SSHD one is the one that runs on your server.
Yeah, so I didn't totally understand it either, but here's Wikipedia. In multitasking computer operating systems, a daemon is a program that runs as a background process rather than being under the direct control of an interactive user. Don't most daemons run as background process? And aren't they most of them out of our direct control? Sorry, I thought it was funny.
So if I wanted to connect from this computer to that computer with SSH, like for me to connect from here to here, this computer has to be running the daemon before it can receive a connection. That's what's happening.
All right. So it's a background process, listening for SSH connections.
Yeah.
So let's configure it. I need to click into that window. There we go. So here's all the settings on it. And we are doing this one. And we want to permit root login to disable root login. So somewhere in here, there's something about permit root login. So Control V to go down. And login, permit root login. No. And password authentication to disable logging in with the password. So password authentication, anybody see that? Password authentication. Right here. And what do I have to do to make this work? Carson? Bob?
I don't remember. It's been so long since.
Comment it out, man. Take the comment away.
Oh.
There you go. Control X. Yes. Save it. So we just change that. And make sure to uncomment the line as well. Restart the SSH service. So I'm just going to go back to my root and then service SSH restart. Cool. And make sure you test if you can still access it with normal connection before you disconnect the root terminal. So new tab in terminal. And SSH at IP, e.g. Todd at, did I still have my IP address? There we go. Oh, SSH Todd at. Cool, so I was able to reconnect. So even though I changed my SSH daemon, I want to make sure it still works. And test that the root login really is disabled. So I could exit, what happens? And then I could try SSH root at, and I can't get in. So I can now only log in as Todd, and only if I have the private key. And what would you call it? My Linux server in the cloud has the public key, so when we connect with SSH, my private key encrypts some message, sends it to the server, which has the public key, and decrypts it and says, okay, you're good. That's pretty cool. You guys like that? I like that. You learned something new? You learned something new?
I've never used the SSH keys before. I've just used passwords because I'm lazy.
You like that? You like the keys?
Yeah, I've never tried it. So.
Well, no, dude, it's like 5 minutes and then you never enter your password
Yeah,
again.
No, I saw it and I thought it was too complicated for me to learn in a short period of time, and it was pretty easy.
Patrick?
Yeah.
You digging it? Turn your monitor, dude, so I can see you. You're digging it? Cool.